Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast. He is he's not freshly shaven. He's about as freshly shaven as I am, which is to say that there is evidence of there's stubble. There's stubble happening. I don't know why that's the first thing I went to, because he got a haircut today and he looks just dandy with his new haircut. He is also a writer. He writes about the Knicks for The Athletic. My main man, Fred Katz. Hello, sir.
Stubble happening. That's my number one credential. There's stubble happening. My number one credential is there's just hair in all the places you don't need hair.
I must spit out my water.
I think that's my defining characteristic.
I hate the way I look clean shaven. I don't know about you.
Me too.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same
page. I haven't actually been clean shaven. I haven't been like full on clean shaven in a very long time, except for one time during the pandemic when the razor slipped and I went clean shaven, and that was it. And other than that, and I hated how I looked. And other than that, I haven't been clean shaven in forever.
I didn't even go clean shaven for my wedding. I did a trim that morning. And then I think I may have gone clean shaven once since then. It was during the pandemic when I knew nobody was going to see me like on camera or anything for like a couple of days. But that's it. This is clearly what the people came to hear. So we're recording this. We should say this is not going to drop until later in the week. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. The Knicks are home. They're about to face a Memphis Grizzlies team that has run roughshod over the league over the last 2 months. Best record, best net rating since the end of November. I'll start here. We were originally going to record this afterwards, and we pivoted to today. Do you think that there's anything that could happen, let's say in tonight's game, or I'll even extend it to the first 3 games of the West Coast trip those are the 3 that occur before the trade deadline, that can/should influence how this team may act at the trade deadline?
Yes, because people are human and they react in human ways. And we also come to those sorts of biases. So yes. And quite frankly, we don't really know how Leon Rose in that front office thinks because they don't disclose that stuff publicly. So yes, I think it's possible that it can do that because there are very few scenarios in which I'm going to say, nope, this can't happen with the Knicks because we don't really know how they're thinking. And when you ask around the league, by the way, and you ask other teams, hey, who are you hearing the Knicks are making available? Some people say, they're trying to make a 2-for-1, 3-for-1, that sort of trade, maybe open up a roster spot. And then some people say, Fournier's, been made available. And some people say, Kemba's been made available. And some people say, they're looking to maybe trade one of their vets and get back a young thing. It's like okay, so just like literally everything. So just literally every single possible thing is on the table. Great. Like that's, and we've kind of seen that in reports, right? Like we've just seen, Fournier is available. Okay, cool. And just kind of trickles out to different places depending on who has good sourcing where, and so can anything happen with their front office? Yes. Anything there is possible because we don't know we're just not cognizant of what their thought process is. Should it? Probably not. I think we know. I'm willing to say that I think we know what this team is. And unless there is a significant change in process over this next week and a half, and then maybe the reaction is to a change in process, they find some way to get Randle to the rim more or
we're going to get to your article in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Or whatever. And then it actually works. Maybe that's the scenario in which you say, okay, maybe the prognosis changes a little bit, but if they keep playing the same way and the ball just happens to go in more and they get some upset wins against Memphis and, in LA and in Utah, that's not really how you operate. You operate over what's going on over the course of the whole season.
Well, it's like if we had operated, or maybe people who made assumptions about what this team was going to be after the first 6 games of the season when they were 5-1 and they had the second highest effective field goal percentage in the league because they were hitting freaking everything. Like if they had made plans based on that probably would have been a poor idea because strange things could happen in small sample size. I agree with you about the Randle thing. We're going to get to your piece in a moment because it really hit on. I was like, I know you're focusing just on Randle and just one aspect of Randle's game, but if there's one thing that if you could read one thing and it really kind of sums up like where things have gone awry for the Knicks this season, it was your piece. Before we get there though, in terms of what they might do, I do feel, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I do feel like we've seen enough from this front office, just in terms of maybe the moves they haven't made, that I would be very surprised if they sacrificed a future asset or a young player that they found to be a valuable part of their team for a quote unquote win now move. Now it gets a little complicated because like, if you trade for Jalen, just to throw a name out there, I don't think they're going to be traded for him, but if you trade for Jalen Brunson, is that technically a win now move? Yeah, technically, but he's also whatever he is, 24 years old. So, Miles Turner, maybe even kind of you could squeeze into that category, although I don't know. It like goes both ways. I'd be surprised if we saw that. I think the bigger question is whether they make an outright, like, this is not going to help us win games this year in terms of like a Burks, Burks for a second rounder or something like that. So that what are your thoughts on that front?
I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I think there's nuance here. Like Miles Turner is the name I mentioned in my story this morning, and
with good reason.
I think teams are kind of worried about him. I forget the exact language I used. I think I said weary in the story, just because he's dealing with a stress fracture in his foot. And you hear with a big man with a stress fracture in his foot, you're just like, oh no, especially when you don't have a definitive return date that at least the public is aware of, right? People just wonder what the heck that means in terms of recovery, because big guys with foot injuries, there are a lot of horror stories regarding that. So I don't think that teams are necessarily clamoring for Miles Turner the way that they were when he was healthy. And Miles Turner fits an archetype, which I think would just be great for them for various reasons, which, like you said, I'm sure we'll discuss. But a move like that is like that is that equivalent. That is win now because it helps you get better now, but it's not future destruction. It's not destroying your future. I mean, That's a guy in his mid-20s who has another year of his contract on at a reasonable salary, who I'm sure before you do a trade like that, any organization does its intel, finds out, hey, you think the guy would be interested in re-signing here? He was like, yeah, of course I would re-sign with the Knicks. What are you talking about? If you gave me a fair salary, of course I'd come back. So, or of course I wouldn't come back. Like, you do your intel and find out, a guy's interest in coming back. And I think that's true for basically anybody who's consequential, who they would give up young pieces for. They also they kind of have too many young guys,
well, and they added one more recently.
Yes, exactly. And look, I have covered teams where a coach doesn't play a guy who a front office wants them to play. And I can't sit here and say I have sources that say that the front office wants Tibbs to play Reddish, but when you trade a first round pick for a guy, you don't do that for him not to play. And I'm not even arguing that Tibbs is handling this wrong, by the way. It's just when you trade a first round pick for a guy, you want to see that guy get minutes. And I've seen, I was covering the Thunder when Billy Donovan was back and forth on Alex Abrinas' role, and the front office really liked him, and the Thunder traded Anthony Morrow. And then Billy Donovan was, oh no, if I want to play a shooting guard who can be a catch and shoot 3-point guy, I guess I got to play Alex Abrinas now. We've all seen, and
that's a good organization. That's a sound organization. They do things. I feel like they do things from the outside looking in. They do things the right way. Would you disagree?
It's a great organization. That's my point. It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere. It happened it's like a famous scene in Moneyball when Billy Bean trades Carlos Pena so that he'll play Scott Hatteberg at first. When Art Howe is insisting on playing Scott Hatteberg's not a first baseman, Carlos Pena is a first baseman. And then Billy Bean says, you know what? Screw it. I'm trading Pena just so you play Hatteberg.
Famously stubborn Art Howe, speaking of qualities that the New York Knicks head coach may possess.
But my point is that kind of stuff happens like all the time.
Yeah.
And we don't, it's like really common. It's not like a thing that just happens. It is common. So I could see them just wanting, they have too many guys. And I don't even think like the whole, you have to play Reddish thing is, I don't know. What do you make of that? What do you make of the whole, you have to play Reddish thing? Cause I think it's overstated, to be honest.
My own 2 cents is they got him as an asset. And me and Jeremy, who does the weekly pod with me, we kind of thought of it as like, okay, it's a guy that they know they're going to be able to resign for, a Fournier type number that's going to be able to either look, it's one of two things. Either they're banking on him being a tradable asset at that number, or they're banking on him being potentially a part of their core. In which case the number may not matter as much. But like, I just think they need to get a good sense of what this guy is and what this guy could do moving forward before they enter negotiations this summer. What do they need to be able to make an informed decision? I don't know, 15, 20 games of watching the kid play, but like, how far do you go? Like the last 10 games of the season, teams aren't always trying so I don't know how much longer I'd push it. I'm fine with it up until now. If we're 5-10 days past the deadline and we're still not seeing him in games, then maybe I'm a little bit more okay. There seems to be some discord here.
I would venture to guess that an extension is more unlikely than not.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that would be my guess, just based on history. Normally in trades like this, guys don't get extended. Teams want to take a little extra time in order to evaluate them. And Reddish, you don't need to extend, probably. I mean, unless he has a breakout year 4.
I was about to say, unless it's like a Brandon Ingram situation, and he has not shown anything close to what Brandon Ingram showed.
I mean, Look, let's coin this. I have privately coined this, the Bridges conundrum, which is Well, this is the Bridges conundrum, or maybe the burning bridges conundrum, because you don't want to be burning bridges. But
do you imagine if he left, by the way?
But, well, it really is, because on one side you have Phoenix extending Mikal Bridges.
Nice
number, 90 mil.
For both player and team, by the way. It's a fine number.
I agree. If I were Mikal Bridges, I'd be very happy with signing that contract extension. And if I were Phoenix, I'd be thrilled having a player of that caliber, of that role,
100%,
and paying him that salary. I think that is the ideal, just best situation for both parties. And then the other side, you have Miles Bridges in Charlotte, who turned down an extension, and now he's really going to get, I think he's going to make more than the extension number he turned down, because he's having a great year and he's integral to what Charlotte is doing.
The demand is the max. Our negotiation gets us to the max.
Yeah. And so you're just, which Bridges situation are you going to end up being in?
He hasn't shown as much as either of those guys.
No, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
He's not helping his case either.
No.
Ooh, like he's only getting garbage. The way you get in, Quentin Grimes said it the other day. Like, Quentin Grimes was saying, I want to be the one rookie who Tibbs comes in and plays. I heard he doesn't play rookies, so I want to be the rookie who comes in and he has to play. And he said, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to approach games. I'm going to approach practices like games, and I'm just going to play my behind off. And that was the gist of what he was saying. Reddish came into that game against the Kings in a 25-point game. And about 2 minutes into his playing time, he jogs down the court next to his guy. There's a 50-foot chest pass thrown down the court after a make. Mm-hmm. He jumps into the passing lane, misses it by no less than 12 feet, then jogs behind his guy, who dumps off for an open layup with like 20 seconds left on the shot clock after a made Obi Toppin 3. Now, it was totally inconsequential, and I actually don't think Tibbs saw it in the moment because he was putting Jericho Sims in the game. But when Tibbs goes back and looks at that game tape, like that's not how he's going to get this coach to play him. Well, so it's not just a Tibbs thing, and that's what he's famous for. That's why he's not playing to begin with, because he did that stuff in Atlanta all the time in actual moments that mattered.
And he said it in his introductory press conference. I don't know if you're the one who asked him the question that solicited the answer, but he was like, I still think I'm a star. I think I'm going to be a star. I'm on track. I'm pretty sure the word star was used. And when a guy thinks of himself as that way, and then he's put in a position where, again, like this, you're playing the last 5 minutes of a blowout. Show me what you got. I just, I wonder, is there an about face at some point there? Enough about Cam Reddish. We've already given him more time than he deserves. So let's get to your Randle piece. So here's how I want to approach this. So you're the numbers, if there were a couple of numbers that defined this Knicks season, you quoted them at the top of the piece. 3-pointers went from 41% to 31%. Mid-range, 42% to 33%. My goodness. You mentioned he's getting to the line fewer times. And then you have the number that I think is the centerpiece of the whole article, which is that he takes less than half in terms of percentage of his total shots at the rim when he is playing alongside a traditional big than when he's not. And you basically make the point that, and I want you to expand upon in any direction you want. If you have a big who can't shoot and you got a coach who's like, hey, we got to protect the rim. What do you do? If you don't have a stretch five, what do you do? And you place blame in, I think, a couple of different areas. And I like how you did that. And I want to get into that. But like, yeah, take it away.
Yeah, I do not think it is a one person problem. And that's kind of why I wrote the story, because I think the vast majority of the blame has been placed on Julius Randle for his shot selection this year. And I don't think I left Julius Randle blameless in the story.
But no, you did not.
There's no question that I think if you want to like rank blame, I think it's fair to say Julius Randle is the number one person who is the most responsible for his shot selection. If he just wants to not give a crap and power his way to the rim and shoot up flailing, triple teamed layups, he's strong enough and dynamic enough to where I think he could actually justify doing that, at least more than he actually does. And so much of this is about his processing speed, to where he just receives the ball and it affects him in so many other ways of the game. He receives the ball. He doesn't find the quick guy in the corner often, like that. Normally, if the ball goes to him, it is stopping, and that's a processing speed thing. So I don't think Randle is removed from blame. I just think it's a very simplistic way to look at it and say Julius Randle isn't taking many shots at the rim, and so that's a Julius Randle problem. When the reality is, like you said, he's playing next to a traditional big all the time, which is clogging up their spacing, and that is a lineup choices thing, which is a Tom Thibodeau thing, because Tibbs wants a rim protector. But it's also a front office thing, because if there is one dude who tells you exactly what he is and exactly how he views the game, it is the guy the Knicks hired to coach their team. They know exactly how Tom Thibodeau thinks. They know exactly how he wants to play, and they put together a roster with centers that don't necessarily complement that. Now, I mentioned Miles Turner in there because he is a really good rim protector. He is the Henry Clay. He is the great compromiser. He is the guy who he's going to be around the rim, and he is going to be a good enough rim protector that Tibbs will be thrilled to play him 30 minutes a game. And he's also on the other end. He's not an elite 3-point shooter, but he's good enough to
keep you honest.
Guard. Right. There's a difference between shooting and spacing. I think those concepts get conflated.
It's a great line.
And so if you're I'd rather have a 33% shooter who you have to guard than a 37% shooter who nobody wants to come out and close out on, because that guy's still going to clog up the floor.
And we should say, against some, again, they did it against Sacramento, or I think it was against Sacramento, where they stuck Noel in the corner a couple of times. And teams that aren't really on it in the regular season, which a lot of teams come into games in the regular season and they just not maybe going through the motions, but it's not like you're playing a playoff series where teams are going to be keyed in. It doesn't matter if he's over there, just leave him over there. It's fine. You'll be able to steal a couple possessions here and there, but it's not a sustainable thing. I agree with you. It is an issue. Also, by the way, we should say and this is where I guess I'll be a little bit of I'll be kind to the front office. Could they have possibly fathomed a shooting drop off like this? Do you think it was reasonable to right?
No, not like this.
Not to this.
No, this is the most extreme timeline. This is the most. I think most people anticipated a fall off. I don't think people thought he was that great of a jump shooter, because he was one of the best jump shooters in the league last year, and this year he's one of the worst high volume jump shooters in the league. But yeah, this is extreme. I mean, the other thing about the front office is there's a reason why I keep mentioning Miles Turner and not all these other centers who protect the rim and shoot threes, because there aren't very many of them. Those guys are very difficult to come by. It's why Miles Turner is so desirable. It's why, and guys like that don't tend to hit the market. Like Jaren Jackson Jr. is a power forward who blocks shots and who shoots threes, and he gets gobbled up by a 9-figure contract extension. He's not going to hit the market. Brook Lopez immediately goes back to Milwaukee because they know how important he is. And then beyond that, it's just like, now we're talking about the Nikola Jokic's and Joel Embiid's of the world. It's like, well, if you can get Nikola Jokic, then yeah, you should.
I would like Nikola Jokic on my basketball team.
Yes, I'm not going to knock the Knicks for being unable to trade for Nikola Jokic this summer. But that said, it's like they put the absolute. It's not that they don't have a guy as good as Miles Turner in that role. And it's not even that they don't have a guy who fills that role in the same way. It's that they have the most extreme versions of these at the rim guys. Yep. I mean, one thing, and it's not just about where these guys like Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel are taking shots from, because every once in a while Taj Gibson will come out and shoot a three. It's about where they occupy space even when they're not shooting.
Yep.
And that was something that I could have put in the story. You know, there was something in the story, or I didn't put in the story, that I just found when I was looking stuff up, which is just a fun Mitchell Robinson fact, which is
please.
Mitchell Robinson is taking his average shot is closer to the rim than any other player in the NBA this year. And
given that he's shooting 78%, I'm not surprised.
No, it's not shocking. I think the player who is the second closest average shot is Clint Capella. And Mitchell Robinson is 2.5 times closer to the rim on his shots than Capella.
Wow.
That is how on the inside Mitchell Robinson always is. It's that they have the most extreme version of these rim diving centers, and it's just clogging things up. And I think that's something that we could have seen, because it's not like Randle was getting to the rim last year. He got to the rim even less last year. It was just masked over because he was an incredible jump shooter.
Yeah, but I wonder how much of, and like this year, it's just, you can't make any determinations about what their ideal center rotation would be because everybody's been injured. But even like last season, like, yes, I know it was the Rose trade was obviously the big thing, but like Mitch went down, Noel went into the starting lineup. Noel's playing predominantly with Julius Randle. Guess what? The offense picked up. Like, is that a direct, he was taking more jump shots last year, but you'd really have to go back and pay attention to like, well, were teams playing him slightly different? Something else you snuck into the third to last paragraph of this story, and I love how you just stuck this in there. They could also get, I'm reading what you wrote. They could also get Randle downhill more in more pick and rolls. Maybe they could bust out some Kemba Walker pick and rolls, possibly the best man for that job. Kemba Walker is one of the best pick and roll players the league has seen over the last 10 years. He is on the Knicks. And, my colleague, Benji Ritholtz, has mentioned this recently on Twitter. Like, they just don't do it. Like, now is that? I'm Julius Randle. This is how I want to play, and this is how I don't want to play, and that's why we're not doing it. Is that a Tibbs stubbornness thing? Like, I don't even know how to begin to answer that question.
I actually don't know the answer. It's probably something I should ask in a press conference, because when Kemba had that great streak, when he after the benching, part of the reason was that he was running way more pick and rolls. They were putting the ball in his hands. Now, they didn't have a full roster because that was when they had a bunch of guys in protocols and stuff. But yeah,
Randle was there.
Randle was there. Mm-hmm. And Randle could be, to his credit, he and Ben pointed this out with a couple of really good Twitter threads and tweets that I saw. Randle did a really good job against the Kings doing a lot of this stuff. And it's independent of the fact that they're the Kings. It was the Kings defense is absolutely nothing to be enviable of at all. But, Ben pointed out a clip on Twitter of him after a turnover, just absolutely busting ass down the floor, and then flipped it to RJ for a dunk. It's like, that has absolutely nothing to do with who you're playing. That's just, I am going to beat you down the floor. It was a gear we haven't seen. And
you mentioned that in the piece too, I should say.
For sure. And even from the first quarter of that game, he noticed, okay, Fournier is hot as hell. And they started blitzing Fournier on pick and rolls just to get the ball out of his hands. So Randle just 6 minutes into that game, tries to get Fournier the ball on a dribble handoff. It doesn't work as well. So he tries to get Fournier the ball on another dribble handoff, repositions himself. He sets a screen. They blitz Fournier. Fournier ends up throwing it to Randle. Randle goes quick dribble and kicks to the corner. Like I talked about processing speed, his pace that he played both on the break and in the half court in that game, I thought was really, really good. And I don't know, maybe from that sense, the pace that he plays with, all that, like I think it's, like I said, it's reasonable to say that he is the number one guy who can turn this around by just playing with, an energy and intensity that we saw from him last year.
So, leads me to something else I want to reference, which was a piece you wrote largely about Randle. It was, I think, at the end of last week when he finally spoke at practice. It was the first time he had spoken in a while, and you had all the things that he said in there, and like everything we're talking about right now, it's like I think the reason why fans, including me, have been so hard on him of late is because there seems to be, like, for instance, listen, there are a few things that I want to go back and watch less than the Knicks offense from the 2019-20 team. That was, oh my God, some dreadful basketball. Here's the thing, though. Julius Randle this year at the rim, shooting 61%. Last year, 59%. The first year he was here under Fizdale and Mike Miller, 60%. It's the same thing in all 3 years. And except 2 years ago, he took 46% of his shots around the rim. This year, a little bit more than last year. Like you said, 32% last year, 23%. I'm not saying like they need to go back to that like caveman version of basketball, but there seems to be more that he could be willing to do. And that's everything you were just saying. And then going back to your story that you wrote several days ago, he said all of the things that you want a guy to say. But like, I'm just going to ask you, you were there, you saw him say, like, does this seem like a guy who's like really all about I'll quote Jeff Van Gundy on the broadcast. They killed the Knicks against the Heat. You need to be all about winning. Does this seem to you to be a guy who's all about winning to you?
I don't know.
You're kind.
I mean, I don't believe that a person could change this much in 1 year. I will answer your question, not with the take that you're looking for, but with an anecdote.
Sure.
I was talking to a player once about, I don't even remember who we were talking about. We were just like talking about the league, shooting the shit and talking about someone who was in a major slump. And it was I'm not going to say the player, really smart guy. One of my favorite guys to talk hoops with.
The guy who you were talking to, not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
The guy, I don't remember who the player in the slump was. It's not consequential. And we were talking about it. And I was like, is there anything wrong with his shot or something? And the player said to me, when a guy is in a slump for this long, stop just looking at basketball. Sometimes it's basketball. Sometimes something's going on with their life. And I think just sometimes I just, that conversation always comes to my mind when I look at a guy whose mannerisms and whose style of play just totally changes from season to season. And it just colors the way that I evaluate situations like the one where Julius Randle is going through. And I have no idea what's going on in his life, but that's kind of the point of my point, which is just like, I don't know. Last year, I would have answered that question enthusiastically, yes, but I don't think somebody just goes from no to yes to no over a 3-year period. It's the same guy. He's the same person. So I don't know. It's unbelievably weird. It's an amazingly weird season. Weirder than the jump shooting is the transition defense and all the stuff that, falls under that category. That to me is, it may not be more consequential than the jump shooting, but it's weirder. It's harder to explain. But I don't know. I honestly don't know what to make of it.
I don't think anybody does. I mean, how could you? So speaking of transition to the piece you wrote before this most recent Randle piece about Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes, I think, is everything Knick fans are enjoying about this season, are kind of embodied by this kid. And like, there's other young players on the team who like play hard and like the whole thing. He's to a different level. You wrote a really wonderful piece about him. You had some quotes from his dad in there, which I thought were really insightful. I'm wondering, like, this is unfair to ask because it's kind of an impossible question. Like, he's a rookie. He's he's still coming off the bench. Do you think that, and this kind of harkens back to our discussions about trades that they make, do you think he's impressed them enough to the point where they're looking at him and be like, okay, we really have something here, and it may make us a little bit more willing to, explore the market for, I don't know who you want to say, a Burks, a Fournier, something. I guess it would be one of those two guys, right? Because to me, it passes the eye test and the numbers are there too. Again, limited sample size. He's played a little over 500 minutes, but to me, it passes the eye test.
I wouldn't blame them if they did feel that way. I wouldn't blame them if they saw what he's doing right now and they're like, I don't care if he shoots 32% from three the rest of the year. We got to get this guy 30 minutes a night.
Yeah.
Like he's been their best perimeter defender.
I don't think it's not a conversation anymore.
I have no problem saying I don't care what the sample is. He's their best perimeter defender right now. Like he is for sure their best. Who is a better on ball guy than him? And you know who wholeheartedly agrees with us? Tom Thibodeau, because he puts him on the other team's best ball handler every single night now. He's guarding Tyrese Halliburton. He put him on Jimmy Butler. There is nobody on God's green earth who loves Jimmy Butler more than Tom Thibodeau. The greatest way to tell what Tibbs thinks of a defender is who he puts on Jimmy Butler, and he put a rookie on him. Yeah. I mean, he is their best perimeter defender right now.
Guarded Tatum too. I just want to point out.
Sure.
With Celtics, yeah.
Trae Young.
Yep.
Gordon Hayward. And you know what all these players have in common? Nothing. They're all different types of players. It's not even like he's saying he can only guard point guards. He's putting him on point guards. He's putting him on conventional twos. He's putting him on big wings. Like that is a lot of responsibility for a rookie. It's I mean, Tibbs clearly agrees with us that he's their best on-ball perimeter defender. And yeah, I mean, look, if he's going to shoot 40 from three, even if he's going to shoot 35 from three, he's shooting 53 from the corners. Like he's, I think he should be getting more time having nothing to do with, well, I shouldn't say more time because he's getting time now, but I think he should be playing a lot, having nothing to do with his personal development.
Okay. I understand.
He just
helps them win.
He just helps them win.
Yeah.
He's just your best catch and shoot 3-point shooter and your best on ball perimeter defender. And I mean, look, if he develops into, he's showing flashes now of being able to do some stuff off the dribble.
The move on Halliburton, speaking of Halliburton, the move he put on Halliburton the other night, a guy who was, I believe, in his high school class, right? Because Barrett and yeah. Okay, so I wonder if that was a little personal.
Yeah, I wrote a commenter called me out. I wrote in that story like, everything is an NBA first. When Halliburton tries to cross him over, he has nothing in the memory bank of Halliburton crossing him over. And somebody commented, actually, they played 3 times in college. I was like, okay,
dare you, Fred? My
point is the same. My example was extremely poor.
It's okay.
But I mean, look, if he develops into what he seems like now he can develop into, this is the exact kind of guy who can fit into, you drop him onto 30 teams and you don't have to change your scheme. You don't have to change your identity. You don't have to take the ball out of anybody's hands. You don't have to make anybody unhappy other than maybe your starting 2 or your starting 3 who are now going to get benched. And you have a guy who is going to make you better. I mean, this is why Mikal Bridges got $90 million. Like, I'm not saying, oh, he's as good as Mikal Bridges, but that's Mikal Bridges is longer and he is the best player at that role in the entire NBA. Mm-hmm. But when you become elite at that role, you fit everywhere. Like, you put Mikal Bridges on any team and they're better. And the difference between Grimes and let's compare him to RJ Barrett is that Barrett, while his role is a higher leverage role because he does stuff with the ball and pick and rolls and try to get to the rim and all that, his role is a more specific role, especially if he's not going to be a really good 3-point shooter. And I think that dynamic is really interesting. That being said, I can actually see them fitting together quite well. Grimes runs around screens and all that. And like, that's a good fit.
I was about to say, I mean, I think you're looking at the the future starting 2 and 3 for this team. What, we'll see what that means for Fournier. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they have Toppin, who, what do you think this organization thinks of Obi Toppin? I think we get probably into it. What Tom Thibodeau thinks of Obi Toppin. Do you think the organization's still high on him? I'm just, because I have no idea.
I'm not sure. They have look, I don't think Tibbs is as not high on Toppin as people say he is. I really think it just comes down to the fact that he has to have a rim protector on the floor. Like if he didn't feel the way he feels about rim protection, then I think Obi would be playing more. Or if Julius Randle didn't exist, I think Obi would be playing more.
Well, but I think that's what gets
his bread and butter.
Yes, but that's what you see the comments that I get from fans after every game, and they're like, why is Obi Toppin not playing over Julius Randle? And my response is usually like, that's just not how things are done in the NBA. You don't put your all-star. I mean, I know he's not an all-star this year, but you don't put your all-star player on the bench. But I think what people just want is like, well, why can't you just play him 16 or 17 or 18 minutes a game and reduce Julius down to 30? And I guess that's what I kind of meant by like, if he really thought Toppin would help him win a game more by playing an extra 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, I think he would do it. But there are other questions we get asked there too.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. I mean, to your original question, I think the organization likes Toppin. I think if they're committed to Tibbs, then they might be able to, he's a guy who they might be able to get something for, because if you can trade Obi Toppin for somebody who's just as good, but who's going to be able to be played 25 minutes, well, 25 minutes of a good player is better than 14 minutes of a good player. So, I mean, that might be a time where you just, you have to make a move that's specific to the situation. But we'll see. There are a million trades like that could be on this team because they just have so many guys. Like, they have a lot of quantity.
I want to finish up and go in a different direction. So again, RJ, Grimes. I mean, say what you want about RJ. I think he's been fine, up and down, but he's been fine.
Last month, RJ's been quite good.
He's been quite good, and then you go to the couple of months before that, and not so good, and then the stretch at the beginning of the year again, very good. But he's up and down. 3rd-year player, he's 21. I'm not worried about RJ. Grimes, good. Obi, again, I think we've seen some nice stuff. Quickly, same thing. Hasn't shot it well, but like, there are good young players on this team. Not a number 1, maybe not even a number 2, but like, it's enough that you can kind of get excited about it. And then Randle is obviously here, and as long as he's here, it's going to be a team that is kind of built around Julius Randle, which again was kind of the crux of your piece today. Do you think that there is any chance that they are? I'm not even going to ask that they trade him. Do you think that there's any chance that they're giving serious thought to the idea of moving him before the deadline?
Define serious thought.
So like, okay, it's one thing to be like, yeah, we'll trade him if we get back, like the Daryl Morey thing. Like, I have a list of 25 guys who I would trade Ben Simmons for. Well, guess what? You're not getting any of those 25 guys. So I guess you're not trading, but like, it's one thing to do that. It's another thing to be like, all right, this would shake up our organization in a significant way. It might change how we play, but it's a good deal. It's a fair deal. We feel like this could be better for us in the long term, even if we may take a step back this year. Like, the point where you give it real analysis of like a deal that is, again, it's not a star. Like, they're not getting, I don't know who you want to name. I mean, I was going to say Fox, but then again, there's a part of me that wonders, like, would Sacramento do that? I don't even know.
If that's how we're defining serious thought, I would say no.
Okay.
Just because I think, and maybe I'm wrong. And look, if there's one thing I know about the trade deadline, and you don't just know this because you lived through it at the time, it's because once trades are done, people have a way of saying like, yeah, it's done now. It's not a secret anymore. Here's how it happened.
Okay.
Stuff progresses so fast. I mean, we're recording this 8 days out from the deadline. What I say now could be totally different a week from today. And that's still with 36 hours to go before the deadline. Right. So, take this with the entire salt shaker. But what I would say is that if you trade Randle now, you're just selling him. I shouldn't say selling him. I hate it when people say that about players. I hate that. So I know what you mean. But you are dealing him at the lowest point of his value. Like, that is just not proper asset management. I am under the assumption that if you trade Julius Randle, you're basically getting the worst possible deal for Julius Randle, because even if he continues to play at this caliber and he gets absolutely no better, he is the least efficient high volume shooter in the NBA for the next year, then he still becomes more valuable because every day he lives through, his contract is one day shorter. So you are right now, Julius Randle, that player on with a 4-year extension kicking in next year, is different than Julius Randle, the exact same player with 3 years left on the deal, is different than 2 years left on the deal. So if you trade Randle now and he's eligible to be traded on February 3rd, if you do it now, chances are, unless you negotiate one hell of a deal, or there's one team out there, because all it takes is one, nope. Yep. They're just like, nope, it's the situation. We want this guy. He is going to play exactly like he played last year when we go get him. And maybe that exists. And maybe that's the Kings. Maybe it's somebody else. But I think if we're just speaking in generalities, this is as low as you're going to get. And that's just not, when you make that move. I also don't think there should be any urgency to trade him. What's this team going to do?
The only reason I have thought about it, and I have given it serious thought and attention over the last several weeks, especially, is I'm just wondering, are things internally just is it now about more than basketball? And in terms of, like, again, you could watch this team on any given night, and I'm not saying everybody goes all out on every play. You could point to Kemba Walker, you could point to Evan Fournier, you could point to RJ Barrett, of guys who, like, again, there are possessions where they may lose a guy off ball or, like, not give the requisite effort that you'd like to see. But when Randle has become so emblematic of it, is there a risk of that, or maybe it already has, seeping into, again, to use a cliche, seeping into the culture and having further detrimental effects that maybe and again, that's my fear as a fan. That's my fear. But again, I also, I know why you were like, oh, I hate the term, like, selling him. He's an asset. Every NBA player is an asset. It is your responsibility when you run an NBA team to manage a portfolio of assets and to build that portfolio up. Right now, that asset, as you said, is at its lowest value. So how do you reconcile those two things? Where, again, and again, all it takes is one. Maybe they get a nice return, but I see your point. I don't necessarily disagree with you. When something
is at its lowest value, you rebuild it. That's what you have to do. I mean, that's what that story was about. That's what we started. Yes. Let's big picture this thing. Like, that's what, I don't know if you can hear the siren outside my windows. So
I can't.
Great. I have a good microphone then.
You do.
I mean, that's what we started this podcast talking about.
Yes.
You have to rebuild it. You make it better. You help him improve. You put him in a position to where he can be better. And I don't disagree with anything that you just said. Like, I think bad habits absolutely can trickle down from a team's best player, especially when there are young players who can be impressionable. And this is their first glimpse of the NBA. Mm-hmm. And I covered the Wizards. Like, I've seen effort issues. I've seen that happen. The 2018-19 Wizards, holy crap. It was such a awkward locker room. And that was absolutely something that was discussed all the time within that organization.
And that's not this team yet. They still try. I mean, they're a 12th ranked defense. Like, they do try hard by and large.
Yeah. I will, trust me. You want to talk about teams you don't want to watch? Go watch the 2018-19 Wizards. You will see some effort issues.
How about the 21-22 Wizards?
Yeah. Jeff Green in 2019, after the trade deadline, was so certain he was going to get traded. And then in the 7 games after he was traded, played exclusively the 4 and the 5.
Okay.
And did not get an offensive rebound in any of those games. it was just like we are done here. It was
that's incredible.
That entire team was just unbelievable. But no, that's not what's happening here. It's not that,
No.
But I agree with that general concept. That said, I just don't think the way to run an organization also is extend a guy and then at the first sign of trouble, it's like you're out. Like if you believe in a guy enough to give him a 4-year deal, then it shows a disappointing process to all of a sudden then cut bait. It's like, wait, you believed in him that much to give him 4 years, and now after a half of a season, like you don't even think this is recoverable to where you can like if you deal him now, you also might be saying, oh, we actually don't think this is his lowest value. We think he's going to play worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, you think because I don't think he's going to play worse.
I don't know how he could play worse. I guess just again, and I blame last year's team because last year's team was just so much fun and we never had to have these conversations. And like Randle, again, Randle's not the only star player who will have moments where it's like not great. Like the guy that a lot of people want to trade him for, De'Aaron Fox. Like go watch the Kings this year. I'm sure I don't watch them enough, but I'm pretty certain De'Aaron Fox has a lot of moments where it's like, hey, maybe that guy's not giving it his all. So, it's definitely a living in the moment take, and I am certainly not absolved of that. Last thing I'll and I kept you too long as it is. Thank you. I set the over under last night. I think I did this of players to be traded off the Knicks roster at the deadline at 1.5. You taking the under or you taking the over?
Oh, I like that line. It's a good line.
That's the right line, right?
Yeah, that's the right line. Because if they make a trade, you're kind of asking me if they'll make a trade.
Basically, yes. I'm asking you if they're going to make a trade.
Because I kind of feel like it's like a 2 rotation players for 1 trade if they make a trade. So I'm gonna
actually hold on. If you think that, take the over, because if I'm saying how many players will be traded off the roster,
right,
by the deadline. Right. So if you think it's
the question, Well, so the question is, will they make a trade or will they just not make a trade at all?
Basically,
and Reddish is not the Knox is not included in this.
No, Knox is not included on this.
Okay, so I'll be fun. I'll say they make a trade, and I'll say that I'm taking the over. I'll take the over. I think it makes sense. If I were them, I would be aggressive in pursuing something because you want to see, like you just want to see what you have in Reddish. You don't make that trade without seeing what you have in Reddish. And right now, they haven't. Reddish is not justifying playing time right now. So you need to put that team in a position to where he's justifying playing time. And, maybe there's something. Maybe there's something with Fournier. Maybe there's something with Burks. Maybe there's something with Kemba.
Fournier is interesting to me. I was looking at his numbers a couple of days ago. Like the numbers are fine. The numbers are okay.
He's so weird.
He's such a strange player.
So weird.
He was their best net rating on-court net rating guy for like a 4-week stretch, like up until recently. He may still be over since the new year. I don't know.
He's not streaky. It's a different thing. It's not streaky. Streaky is like great for a week. Like RJ is streaky.
I was about to say Tim Hardaway Jr. is another guy. Tim Hardaway Jr. is streaky.
Right. J.R. Smith is streaky. Like
J.R. Smith is streaky in life.
Exactly. Like this is not streaky. This is just full on Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
This is just which Fournier are you gonna get? It's just so weird because he's not a bad player. Like
no, he's not.
I get why Knicks fans get frustrated with him because that's an expensive contract. And at the time he signed that contract, people around the league were like, that's a lot of money for Evan Fournier. But it's not like he's a bad player. Like Knicks fans would not feel the way they feel about him if the Knicks had signed him to the mid-level exception, No,
I agree with you 100%. Or even like
he's a very good shooter. He's a very good shooter.
Yeah. And he's
the ball and
his shots are difficult sometimes too. That's the other thing we should say.
Yes, They are. He takes a lot of late clock shots for them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of like swing it out to Fournier with 4 seconds left and he's in the corner sort of thing. And he's shooting like 45 from the corners. I think he's at 40 from 3. Like,
no, he is.
A lot of attempts. He's a very good shooter. He's a good player. He's just on an expensive contract, and that's frustrating from a roster building standpoint. And he's so weird because some nights he's going to go for 25, and then other nights it's just like, where is Evan Fournier?
Well, that's a good. Like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the court? What is Evan Fournier doing on the court right now? This has been great. I have kept you for too long. I have to go. You have to go. You have to catch a plane. No, tomorrow you're catching a plane. You have to cover a game tonight, and then tomorrow you have to catch a plane. Make sure I got the order right there. Before I let you go, tell the fine folks at home, for anybody who for somehow doesn't know, where they could find you and your stuff.
Yeah, you can go on The Athletic. You can subscribe to The Athletic. You can check out my work over there, The Athletic New York. You can follow me on social media on Instagram at Fred Katz NBA, which, as I told you, I'm actually posting every once in a while on now.
And you did it.
You can see some Knicks stuff if you want to. And I'm much more active over on Twitter. You can follow me at Fred Katz.
Still reading your stuff every day. It is phenomenal. I really enjoy the Grimes piece. And like I said, both of the Randle pieces, everything you write is great. And you're a great follow, during the game as well. For people who enjoy the live tweeting of basketball games, Fred Katz is your man. Now we just wait for the inevitable Russell Westbrook for Julius Randle trade, right? And then I'll have you back on to discuss that.
And I'll cover him in a third city.
They have to trade him here now. You can't get
I was talking to a buddy recently who was saying to me, like, so what are the chances the Knicks get Beal? That would be funny, right? I was like, with the way the beat writing gods work, it'll be Westbrook.
Oh man, you will have to peel me up off the floor if that happens. All right. This was great, man. Thank you.